Today we have something a little on the macabre side. On this gloomy, rainy day, we are in Washington, Pennsylvania, about 35 miles south of Pittsburgh, in a neighborhood that is ironically called Gallows Hill. This nondescript little brick building you see in front of you is the LeMoyne Crematory, named after its founder, Francis Julius LeMoyne. LeMoyne was a medical doctor and a philanthropist in the area. This is the first crematory ever built in the United States. It was constructed in the 1870s. Now, in my research for this video, I learned that there's a difference between a crematory and a crematorium. A crematory is a facility or a site where the cremation takes place. A crematorium is the oven in which the cremation happens. So, we've got that out of the way. Now, Dr. LeMoyne believed that cremation was a more sanitary way to dispose of bodies. In those days, deceased bodies were usually buried in unsealed wooden coffins that went straight into the ground, not in sealed caskets and concrete vaults like we do today. Dr. LeMoyne believed that the decomposition process would eventually contaminate the groundwater, which was drawn up from wells for drinking water. Most people still got their water from wells in those days. And he was afraid the contaminated water could make people sick. The structure was built in 1876, with the first cremation taking place on December the 6th, 1876, when one Baron Joseph Henry Louis Charles de Palm, an impoverished Bavarian noble, was the first person to be cremated here. After Baron de Palm, 41 more bodies would be buried here, including Dr. LeMoyne himself. He was the third person to be cremated here, and he died in 1879. The LeMoyne Crematory, first in the United States, has been placed on the National Register of Historic Places by the United States Department of the Interior. Now, unfortunately, the doors are locked and the windows are all shuttered, so we can't really look inside to see what's going on in there. I'm told that the Washington County Historical Society occasionally conducts tours of the crematory, but this is not one of those days, so we'll just have to look at it from the outside. Now, this is the grave of Dr. LeMoyne himself. He was the third person to be cremated here, a fearless advocate of the right. I'm not sure what the right means in this context, but political right, right and wrong, who knows? But he is actually buried here. Our respects to Dr. LeMoyne. Looking here at the back, we have another shuttered window, so it's impossible to see the inside of the place. It would be interesting if we could somehow get in there, but I don't believe that's going to happen today. The last cremation that took place here was on November 28th, 1900, with the cremation of a lady by the name of Mrs. Mary S. Booth. The crematory was closed the following year and has remained closed ever since. Dr. LeMoyne was a little too far ahead of his time. Cremations really weren't much of a thing back then. Many people believed that cremating was akin to witchcraft and devil worship. Not to mention that burning bodies reminded people too much of hell, and that did not sit well with the Christian crowd. Even as recently as 1960, only about 5% of the American population wished to be cremated after their death. As mentioned a moment ago, looking at the plaque, the Pennsylvania Historical Commission installed this historical marker sign noting the importance of the crematory. That was added to the National Register of Historic Places February 6, 1996. So here it sits on South Main Street in Washington, Pennsylvania. A little oddity that many people probably don't know what it is without stopping and looking at it. So thank you for watching. Please remember to subscribe to my channel and click on that like button. And we'll see you on the next adventure, whenever that is. This is the Tactical Panda signing off.